Thank you so much for being here. I'm Kate Wynn, a content lead here at ONlit, and we are excited to welcome you to our March kindergarten drop-in session, all about using middle of year screening data. We'll begin with our land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that ONLIT's work takes place on traditional Indigenous territories. We acknowledge that there are 46 treaties and other agreements that cover the territory now called Ontario. We are thankful to be able to work on this land, and we are thankful to First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people for their care for and teachings about the earth. This acknowledgement reminds us of our responsibilities to our relationships and to the ancestral lands on which we learn, work, and live. And if you did not already know, ONLIT is a collaboration between Dyslexia Canada and International Dyslexia Association of Ontario. And we are funded by the Ontario Ministry of Education, but do note that views expressed here today are the views of ONLIT and do not necessarily reflect those of the Ministry of Education. In today's agenda, we have the amazing Jenny Van Rees here, who is going to do our presentation topic this afternoon, all about using middle of year screening data. I'm sure you remember Jenny from talking about beginning of year screening data earlier in the year and many other things she does with ONLIT. Then we will stop recording. We'll go into Q&A mode. I have a from the mailbag question that I will be answering, and then we'll open it up if you have questions for me, for Jenny, about today's topic. And then moving on from that, anything else that we have time for related to kindergarten in Ontario with literacy. And we'll share a few little resources and events before we wrap up. And we won't announce the name of the winner, but we will give you the link to that survey this time. And now I will turn things over to Jenny.
Great. Thanks, Kate. All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I am so glad to see you all here. Maybe some of you are coming from your classrooms. Maybe you're just arriving home from a busy day, whatever it was. I am so glad that you are here. Your dedication to learning and your students is encouraging and inspiring. And I'm glad you're here. I am Jenny Van Rees. As Kate said, I'm one of the ONLIT team members. Our school bell just rang 5 minutes ago, so I'm in the library. Should be quiet and hoping our Wi-Fi and everything works well. I am an early reading resource teacher with the WRDSB. I've been supporting kindergarten classes this year as we implement our phonics scope and sequence, and we work on bringing purposeful play into everyday routines. Today, we are looking at talking about middle of year screening. And so today we're gonna quickly and fast and furious gonna talk about first, what are we screening? Then we're gonna go into who are we screening? Then we're gonna talk about how to interpret the data. We're going to talk about utilizing that data for small group instruction. And hopefully, if we still have time, we'll end off with a little bit of progress monitoring. So let's get started. So what are we screening? Some of you might have already completed all your middle of year data. But as a review, here are some measures that are completed depending on what your board has decided. So I've got Acadians, Easy, CBM, and AimsWeb. Essentially, they're all the same screening. They all just may have a little bit of different names. So we've got like letter sounds or phoneme segmentation, or we've got phoneme segmentation fluency, something that's all kind of there, but they really are the same. We're looking at phonemic awareness through phoneme segmentation and alphabetic knowledge of letters and sounds. So we're all kind of doing the same thing. And since this is the middle of the year, you all have experience already doing it beginning of the year. So I'm not really going to go into the nitty gritties of that. We're going to kind of dig deep into some of that data. So who are we screening? In Ontario, it is required for us to screen any students who scored below benchmark at the beginning of the year. But since there are different expectations and measures that are introduced for this screening round, it really is best practice to screen all your students, not just the ones that didn't hit benchmark at the beginning of the year. We want to ensure that all the students are on track now that expectations have increased. It's also really worthwhile to have that whole group data or even grade division data to help determine those next steps. It helps us see that bigger picture. And we really want to make sure that we are getting everyone in as those expectations have changed. Just a reminder that screening isn't just something that we check off our list. Oh, I got to get my screening done, check, put it to the side and don't think about it. Or maybe you just want to see how many red kids do I have or how many blue kids do I have. But if we don't do anything with that information, then that's just time. And we really want to be able to do it. That screening gives us information on what our students are doing in these measures if we look at the response patterns. So let's get into it. And I'm really glad to see that giveaway book is Reading Assessment Done Right. Kate Kate and Stephanie Stoller's book, as it's a book that I'll be using often in this presentation, as Kate, and she's graciously shared some of the images for the presentation, so you'll see them throughout. So we'll get started looking at common response patterns first for phoneme segmentation. So looking at this first example, this was done like kind of like paper pencil. That red line indicates that the student gave the first sound of the word. So they said k. In the second example here, the student was able to give all three sounds. So they were able to go k, a, v. These responses are helpful to see where we go next. But before we get into the where we go next, we're going to go to the response pattern for a second option, and then we'll come back and look at this again. So in our board, we use AOL, Acadian's online learning. So this was what our platform, our iPads look like when we're screening. The green dots refer to the correct letter sounds. The red shows an error, and a full line across shows the word. And so a word like Taz shows that they responded with the whole word, but they first gave that first sound. And we are automatically in Acadians looking for that automatic read. So we're looking for students to say yacht and ig at the beginning to mark that. But that's also for more of a grade 1 expectation. Right now in kindergarten, we are looking just to see those sounds. So we are looking, are they able to know the sounds of a word and say those sounds? Here's the response pattern that we're going to take a look at. Again, this would be like a paper pencil way of responding. And this one, again, is from Reading Assessment Done Right. And here are 4 common response patterns. In the first response pattern, the students are making errors on letter sounds. The red line indicates that the student correctly gave the first sound and the last sound, but they would have done something in that middle. Next, the student gives all 3 letter sounds. So they would s when they saw that word. They didn't recode it. They just said it as those 3 sounds. The next one, the student saw those 3 sounds, s, Russ. And that fourth one, then the student just automatically read Russ. And they were able to do that also within 3 seconds. So when we're using our timing assessments, it's 1 minute. We're looking to get that automaticity piece in there, and they're able to do that. So where do we go next? We're going to use that data to determine our next step. So we got the data, it's there. What are we going to do with it? So after a screener, we want to go and we want to dig a little deeper. So it's not just like a color or that's all they are. We want to see what's going on. So we want to also look at that lowest skill gap to inform what we need to teach next. And in kindergarten, diagnostics aren't really needed for phoneme segmentation or nonsense words reading because we already know what to teach next. The screening data, it's already telling us, so we don't need to go kind of further than that. I like these images from Reading Assessment Done Right, because if a student does not reach benchmark for phonemic awareness, like first down fluency, phoneme segmentation, then we know what to teach next. It's phonemic awareness. We don't need to do a diagnostic to know it. We can just get in there. So we don't need to spend the extra time doing that. We're just going to go straight in, and we can help our students that way. If students don't reach benchmark for letter sounds and blending, we know students need instruction with letter sounds and blending. So we can just jump right in there. So taking the time to do that diagnostic, as I said, isn't necessary. Teaching to the needs would be more beneficial. Now we're going to go back to what we were just looking at to really kind of go to where are our next steps. And that's really that's the secret sauce, really. That's where we can really hone in on that instruction and really get the best of what these students need because we've seen their response patterns. And that's the targeted instruction that we want. So if we take a look here, we're going back to that same spot, and we're saying with the student who gave that first sound, what do? Well, we can teach segmenting middle and ending sounds. For the student who can segment, they're already doing it. Now let's move on. Let's teach decoding and spelling. Nonsense words. That measure is going to give us those meaningful steps of what we want. And this is why it's really helpful to do that middle of year screening data for all of your students, as this is a new measure. It wasn't used at the beginning of the year. And so for time's sake, we're just going to look at the first 2, as that's what most of our students are expected to do in kindergarten. And we're not expecting to read whole words at this point. We are looking at for sounds. So if we look at that first student who made the error on the letter sounds, we want to then teach accurate letter sound connections through decoding and encoding real words. The timing might be a factor where they're not fluent. They might know those sounds, but it's taking them longer than that 3 seconds. It's not automatic. And so that's something you can work on. You can just work on that automaticity. For the student who is accurate with the letter sounds, but they're not blending, they're just giving the 3 sounds, you can teach the student to say the sound, then read the word. Continuous blending can really help. I like to think of it as singing the word, so there's no spaces in between. So it'd be like, it's easier for the student to hear the word than if it's broken up. So if you're hearing you can almost hear when I sing it, you can just really hear the words. So for some students, it's really important to just bring that continuous blending in right away. And once they're able to go from sound to the whole word, then you can work with students on fading that sound by sound to just read the word. So now that we have the data, where do we go next? We're going to look at that data. We're going to look at who's below benchmark. Who do we need to focus on? We need to target that lowest skill gap, which for our kindergarten students is phonemic awareness and alphabetic knowledge, letter names and sounds. So we're going to take a look back at that data and you're going to ask yourself, how many students are below benchmark? Is this a whole class concern or is it just a select few? If it's the majority of your whole class is below benchmark, first, I want you to look at your tier 1 phonics instruction and ask yourselves, is it explicit and systematic? Are you teaching at that perky pace? Are you teaching more than one letter a week? Are they getting in all of those really great things? Are you integrating your phonemic awareness with letters? Also, are there opportunities for students to practice what they've been explicitly taught in your phonics lessons within the classroom or maybe in outdoor play? Here's an example of using pointers for purposeful practice inside the classroom. So they're just pointing out letters that are there. There's some sentences that students can go and they can read them. And this was a resource that our kindergarten itinerant created for putting ideas for purposeful play using materials that are already in your classroom. So I want you to think about your tier 1 and your classroom experiences. Is there anything that you could tighten up or you can increase instruction for all your students at that time? That way, that might be where your data is going. But on the other hand, it may be some of your students. It might not be your entire class. There might be some that are below benchmark on a specific task. You can look at those response patterns, like we just did, and then you can group those students to target instruction. And now we're going to focus a little bit on small group instruction and how we can do that. Another fantastic scholastic book in the Science of Reading Practice series is Julia Lindsay's book, Small Groups for Big Results. Here's what she had to say about small groups. Small groups allow for targeted instruction to meet diverse needs. Small group instruction can be purposeful and highly effective. Decades of research shows that when implemented well, it can build on effective whole class instruction and accelerate reading achievement. Small group instruction can be your best use of time during your purposeful play or during your center's time. How can that happen in a busy classroom, you might wonder? Like, how do you make that work? You and your partner can be a really good asset there where you can work together. Utilize that idea of an up educator, that one that's moving around supporting that purposeful play, while the down educator is working in a small group. I've heard other ones where maybe your DECE takes the class to gym, or maybe they're outside at outdoor play and you're doing a small group. You can make those decisions, but see how you can work together so that you can get these small groups. And also, we're not talking long. Small group instruction is easier to differentiate because we already know that. The students who receive the immediate direct feedback, and that bolsters that whole class instruction. So that already bolsters your phonics instruction that you're doing. Now you're giving it to those select few that need it. Research tested small group instruction for alphabet knowledge and phonemic awareness tend to include about 3 to 5 students. And this is some information that I had gotten from Julia Lindsay's book, which really gets a lit review in everything that she's done because it's all just that research and she's just giving different ideas in everything that she's done from taking the research. So it's a really great book. Children need an opportunity to practice with your direct support in a small group. So now that I've kind of given you the research in the background, let's make it practical. I've got a few ideas and resources for you to think about and possibly try with your students. The first example is phoneme segmentation fluency. And here's an example that Kate shared on Instagram from December. So the data here, it shows that 4 students that she worked with, she did progress monitoring before middle of year data. So she was checking in with those students, probably wondering, I'm not sure they've got this. I'm going to do a progress monitoring before, see how they're doing. And she saw from the data that she needed to work with them. So she took those students for 10 minutes a day for 6 days. And at the end of the 6 days, she progress monitored again. And that's what this data shows. So of the 4, 3 of them were already at benchmark and 1 was below. And she also let me know that all of these students were at or above benchmark by the time she screened them for middle of year. Now she used word lists, phoneme segment with 2 and 3 phonemes, segmentation cards, word segmenting using cards, paper parking lots. The materials, they don't need to be expensive or fancy. You don't say, oh, I don't have those things, I can't do it. Small groups, it doesn't need to be a huge task. It's not something that your special education team has to do. It's something that you can do. And it's something that we all can do. And if we think about this one, this was done for 6 days for only 10 minutes in a day. That's pretty exciting to see. For more on phonemic awareness, I want you to stay tuned for next month's drop-in session. So I'm going to stop there with phonemic awareness. Embedded picture mnemonics. These cards, it's a great research-based way to teach children about letters and sounds that they represent. The letter cards have a picture with a key on it of the keyword that embeds it in there, so you directly see it. It's that image. Research indicates that students learn letter-sound correspondences better when they're taught with the embedded picture mnemonics. And all of these resources there are available through the ONlit resource library, and MJ is going to share those in the chat if she hasn't already. Here is an example of a targeted instruction routine for low scoring, for students who are scoring low on that nonsense word fluency. So Kate shared this also on Instagram. So I just kind of shared those things. So she graciously is sharing them for all of us to see. And in this targeted routine, she worked with a small group or individuals for 8 to 10 minutes a day. So again, we're not talking huge time here. 8 to 10 minutes, pull them over. And she did kind of 3 steps. Step 1, review the code pack, which is the letter names and sounds that were taught so far. Step 2 is sound dictation. She said the sound, students wrote the sound down. And step 3, blending. They were using real words, starting with 2 phonemes and then moving into that third one. When we're working with letter sounds and blending, we want to start with those continuous sounds that like you can sing. So like I was saying before about singing those sounds. So if you think about like the word if, but then you also can just think of like letters like F and L, M, N, S, V. You can hold them. So you can go, so example like mat, mat, or sun. I'm holding those sounds. It's a continuous sound together. That way you can already hear it. As I'm saying it, you can hear it. And you're really hoping that that's what you want your students to be doing as well. That's just a picture that I created about a road underneath the cars. So as the cars drive by, they're going to say those sounds. Lab. Bring the car back and say it fast. Lab. When you're thinking about creating words, you don't need to reinvent anything. Like use words from your phonics program and make sure that you've connected it to what you're teaching. Then you know that those sounds are words, or those letters and sounds they know in those words. So you're not having to find new things. Use what you've got. I want to point out too that all of the words we're using are real words for the routines. We want our students to connect meaning to the words they're reading. Nonsense words are just used for the screener to ensure that students haven't just memorized CVC words, but they truly know those typical phonics codes for each letter. Now, once students are able to start blending sounds into words, you want to introduce sentences to read. Kate goes on in her post to say that once students can blend individual sounds, she tried syllable sentence decodables, and once they could read those, they were scoring out of the intervention because they were able to read them. Just a few more ideas for resources. Next Steps in Literacy Instruction is a great book for intentional small group ideas for phonemic awareness and phonics. ONlit did a book study, and all the recordings, slideshows, and links to the study are in the resource library, and MJ can share those as well. The book is available on the OCT library for Ontario educators, and you can actually get the book sent to your house, or there's also electronic version, so you can log on and see that there. And I just showed here, this was just the steps. So that's just how they outline doing that small group. But in that book, there are activities and little things that you can take and be like, oh yeah, that would be a really great one. And you can just kind of use that piece too. As mentioned earlier, Small Groups, Big Results by Julia Lindsay is another great resource. She provides this really simple routine for her small groups: review, teach, practice, and apply. And she talks about in her book about the routines to support alphabet knowledge and phonemic awareness can be quick. It's 5 to 10 minutes each. And groups change as students gain the skills. So you're not making the groups, if we think maybe years ago, you might have had like a bluebird group and the redbird group, and they stayed the same, and you just worked on different things. In here, you're working with those kids that have that need, and then they've got it, off they go, and then that group might morph into something else for that next need. I really like one of her examples here. She did it for routine 4.1. It was called How to Support Automaticity in Letter Sounds. And I like this one here, the mix up, which is talking about students scramble several magnetic letters or tiles. The teacher says the letter sound, the student selects the letter and repeats the sound 4 times. She also says in her book, by repeating practicing target letter sounds, children will develop automaticity. Aim for at least 15 practice or application opportunities with the target letter sound per lesson, but keep the lesson short, under 10 minutes. So like as Anita Archer would say, keep that perky pace. These routines and activities I shared are not 30-minute lessons, right? Choose one area to focus and keep it short, 10 minutes maximum. It's just a quick burst of time to get those students targeting at that one specific need. And that brings us to Progress Monitor, which I have time for. Take a moment and just read this quote to yourself. First, we screen. Then we use the screening data to target instruction, and then we monitor progress and continue to use data to target instructions needed. Progress monitoring is a check-in during your instruction. You don't have to wait and see if the students are on track. This allows you as the educator to see if your instruction is working. This is why we progress monitor, to check in to see, am I doing this? Is this working? It's not just, I'm just going to do this and I haven't done anything to help support the kids, but you've supported them. Now let's see if it's working. Ideally, you want to progress monitor once a week. For some people, it might be twice, but in kindergarten with these needs, and if you're doing like quick, as Kate did, it's 6 days, she was able to see a huge growth. You want to be able to see that in a week. So if you can, try to do that. And remember, you're only completing that for that small group. You're not progress monitoring your entire class. You're progress monitoring just that small group of students you're working with. You are checking in to see if the instruction is working. You want to allow for a few data points. So you might you might do your progress monitoring in a week and you might not see anything quite yet. It might take a little bit of time, and that's okay. Give yourself a little grace, but then after a few data points, take a look at it. These measures are designed with sensitivity to detect change. So the scores reflect progress that occurs relatively over short intervals. So it does show that, which is really neat. I want to point out quickly too, that progress monitoring is not the same as a Friday UFly check-in, spelling celebrations, something that many of you might be doing at the end of a week after your whole group instruction. This progress monitoring that we're talking about is separate. It's attached to your screener. The expectations are the same skills you screen during middle of year or beginning of year. It's just with a different set of words. And it's all provided for you from your screener. So whether you've got that online, it's populating that way, or you've printed it out, or it's in a booklet, it's giving you something different. So you're not giving them the screener from the middle of year information, but it's very similar, and you're scoring it the same way. When you are choosing to do progress monitoring, you're going to think about 3 things, and this came from reading assessment done right. Monitor the skill you're teaching. monitor only one progress measure at a time. So which one are you going to choose to do? And then set an ambitious goal to close the gap. Now, in kindergarten, our ambitious goal is the end of year benchmark because that's where we're looking. We want our students to have that success. For some students, that might be really ambitious, but we want our kindergarten students leaving kindergarten, having them at benchmark to give them that better success of reading success as they continue on in that school, in their school career. This chart is from chapter 6 from Reading Assessment Done Right, where Kate and Stephanie get into the specifics of progress monitoring. So here that you can set the goal using paper pencil, or if you're using an online program, the graphing in the online is done for you. So I use the online program, so that hard work is done for me, which is kind of nice. Your progress monitoring materials have a booklet and the graph that you can use, and then you plot it onto the graph, you make your line, and you can kind of see where that growth is. As you progress monitor, you mark all of those marks on your graph to see, are they following that aim line, and hoping that maybe you can get there sooner than end of year, but your goal is the end of year. So let's make this practical in the last few minutes that we have to kind of see how that works with progress monitoring your small group. So let's say your middle of year data shows that you've got 4 students that really need support with phoneme segmentation. They only had beginning sounds. So you're going to plan to work with that group for 6 minutes a day, right? 6 minutes, maybe 6 to 10 minutes if you can, maybe. Your intervention routines focus on segmenting words using chips, word picture cards, maybe moving cars into parking spots. So think about those sounds, blending 2 to 3 phoneme segmentations, phoneme words, maybe 2 at first, then add that third when they can hear that third sound. Since we're focusing on phoneme segmentation, then that's what we're going to progress monitor on. It's just going to be on that. Each week, you'll meet with the students for 1 minute to progress monitor. I like to actually do that at the same time. So after I've met with my group, I could keep one student and I'll do their 1 minute progress monitor, and then off they go. Then the next day, I can choose another student. So I'm not doing it all at one time, but I'm just doing one at a time. So it really is just 1 extra minute. It's just a quick little check-in. So here is a booklet form of phoneme segmentation. And so for starting to make that graph, so you've worked with those students, you're taking a look at your graph, you're going to chart where they started off from and you mark it. Then you're going to mark your end of year expectation. Then you're going to draw your line so it can go across. And then in Acadians, it's 40 sounds, which is the same benchmark for grade 1, just as an interesting beginning of year benchmark. So 40 sounds that you're trying to segment. You're going to draw that line to connect it. Every time you progress monitor, you'll use a different set of words that are provided, and you'll score it exactly the same. You're going to record how many sounds they have, and you're going to plot it on your graph. And you're going to see that hopefully you're seeing your growth. From this, we can see that that student is making progress and they're moving above aim line. So what you're doing is working, and what we're seeing is success. And you can stop progress monitoring phoneme segmentation and possibly move into the next thing once they hit that benchmark. So you're looking for that end of year 40, and if they're there, you can stop. You don't have to keep progress monitoring way above. You've got it, they're done. You don't have to keep going. And then maybe you're going to look at looking at some nonsense words to go to that next targeted instruction. So I'm going to end that there. That's a lot to take in after school. I appreciate that you're here. And I'm going to hand it over to Kate for some question answer time.
Thank you so much, Jenny. That was absolutely fabulous. I know a ton of hard work and thought went into that presentation, and we all appreciate that very much. I am going to share my screen now, and I would also just like to mention that we do stop recording when we get to the Q&A, just to keep the Q&A, nice and casual. And so if you are joining us after the fact and watching this recording, thank you so much for being here.